Today's guest is Christian Köhlert, who will be sharing with us about the work of Antonie Peppler, who developed a method of prescribing called creative homeopathy. Creative homeopathy utilizes the symptoms of the body to reveal details of a person's life circumstances, behaviors, and relationships. To learn more about creative homeopathy, visit www.creative-homeopathy.com. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now my mum and your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, homies, and a very warm welcome to Homeopathy Hangout. Today, we get to hang out with Christian Köhlert from Switzerland at the moment. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it that I got invited here.
Well, I was just saying, I'm so annoyed at myself that we didn't press record like the second you came into the Zoom room, because we've already had so many interesting conversations and it's like 5 minutes into the recording. But I just want to say this is why I love the Homeopathy Hangout podcast Facebook group, because I have a running thread in there asking our listeners what guests they want to have on the show. And somebody suggested you. And so I've read a little bit up about creative homeopathy. I don't know much about it. I had to read up on you, and you've certainly done incredible things and traveled all over the place and done all sorts of amazing stuff. So I don't even know where this is going to go today, but maybe if we can start with you telling us how you were first introduced to homeopathy.
I was still a student. I studied design, and to earn some money at the side, I was working on New Year's Eve at the concert as a stagehand. And I got really, really sick and tired of it. I had a nose full, so to say. So I'm getting into this symptom language. But a friend of mine, he gave me some pills and just gave me some in hand. And I said, isn't that too much? You know, you just gave it so casually. I said, oh, it's homeopathy. It's pretty much nothing. Just take it. It probably will help or not. We will see. I got it from my cousin or something. So that was the first time I really got the concept of homeopathy. So it's basically sugar pills. It does something, but actually there's nothing in it. You can't overdose on it. That was my first introduction into homeopathy. So later on, I started to look into a wide range of topics. I got really interested in, part of it was alternative medicine. So all kinds of new approaches. And I also got interested in what is reality from a more wider range of, there's just this 4-dimensional space-time construct, and got into quantum physics, entanglement and stuff like that. And all these topics were somehow overlapping when I first got introduced into radionics. So it's basically one branch of information medicine. And because I had such a wide, and I was working for, let's call it alternative media. So was a head or chief editor for a small online television project. So I got always new ideas presented to me and made interviews myself. And one day I came across creative homeopathy, which was developed by a lady called Antonie Peppler. And from the get-go, we had a really good connection. It resonated. And she immediately, because I made an interview with her, and she immediately realized from just the questions that I posed that I had a pretty good understanding of the workarounds in the background, because her whole philosophy was also based on Hermetic philosophy, and all the question that always arises from a materialistic or, let's say, Cartesian kind of worldview. How does homeopathy actually work? Especially in the higher potencies, where you actually shouldn't even find one atom of the original substance. And she realized that I had good grasp on her whole philosophy, and from many different angles that she even explored so deeply. And after the interview, we continued just having a friendship, so to say. And she involved me in some projects. Could you do this for me? Some media stuff. And more, I also became a patient, because I had my own little, let's say, imprints. Not that I was suffering from severe symptoms or something, but I had pattern in my life that I could recognize. And she recognized that also, and say, look, take this little remedy here, take that. And it had a tremendous impact. Yeah. So that was my introduction into creative homeopathy. And from there on, I recorded a lot of talks, and also I recorded the lectures. That is almost a 4 years process for students to become creative homeopaths. And because I had to edit that stuff, I also was listening, and the friendship also developed, and we had deep conversation. And Antonie always felt that I could be the ambassador for creative homeopathy to carry it on, because it was already very established in Germany, Austria, and also Switzerland, but it never really reached the English speaking countries. And so she always wanted me to carry that on. And she died last year. So, and I still feel this burden of giving the basic ideas that she introduced to a wider audience also in the English speaking countries. So that's why I'm very grateful to be with you and share some of these ideas that I feel expanding on the original idea of homeopathy.
That's so cool. I was interviewing Ambika Waters earlier today, and we were just talking about all the great masters that have passed in the last, a handful of years. And we have come to the conclusion that they have probably decided they've got better work they can do on the other side, guiding us from there. And then Matthias Badner is somebody I've had on the podcast, and I was one of the co-hosts for his Network to Heal Summit. And we speak about that often, that there are so many Germans, especially, doing incredible work. I mean, all over Europe, in all sorts of places that have a different language as their first language. But especially it seems in Germany, there's so much incredible stuff happening, which unfortunately does not get translated to English. And so with Matthias's Network to Heal Summit, he did have some translators, and it was great to be able to learn from all these German people. But there's so many books. I've had Ariane Zappa on the show and Andreas Tilch, and they're starting to get their things translated into English, but it's just in a limited amount, which actually leads me on to the next thing that one of our listeners in the Facebook group, Freda B, said to ask you when you are going to translate some more of your books into English. So that's definitely something I feel if we can, maybe with AI, it might be a little bit easier to get some of that stuff translated, but there's some incredible work happening over in non-English speaking circles that I am excited for us to get more access to.
I just finished my second book, and I'm in a process of translating it into English. My first book is already in English, but that is not really related to, at least not the first book, to homeopathy whatsoever.
Yeah, I had a look on your Facebook stuff. There were some interesting topics that you've written on. Holy moly.
The second book, which I just released now, is something which builds the foundation for the whole philosophy behind creative homeopathy, because from all the conversations I had with Antonie, she was really into this hermetic concepts. Kybalion, which is like a basic book, a slim book, but describes the basic principles of hermetics. And the first law is that of mentalism, I think that's the word. So meaning that reality is more like a mental construct. Today we find that same idea in simulation hypothesis, and also in the Vedic tradition we find it at the concept of Maya, the cosmic illusion. So all the ideas are also Plato. If you look at his cave analogy, where he describes reality as something just like projections or shadows that we see at the wall, but it's not the real reality. So the concept that reality is not as physical as it appears to us in our daily reality, and especially if you really want to grasp homeopathy, how information or highly diluted substances can have such a tremendous impact, you will always struggle to explain that in a mere Cartesian or four-dimensional space-time understanding. You have to go beyond that. You have to either have physical models that go beyond the 4 dimensions, not to go too deep into that, but my preferred model is that of Borkert-Heim, the 12-dimensional model of reality, which includes dimension 5 to 8. It's an information realm. In a more esoteric way, you could refer to that as the Akashic Chronic. It's a place outside of time, of physical space and time, where all information are gathered and where there's interaction between the 4-dimensional stage and the higher dimensions. So
I'm not even going to pretend to know about what you're talking about. It went right over my head, but I have heard of the Akashic records, that apparently everything is there and you can go and access that. But other than that, I understood none of what you just said, but I hope our listeners understood some of that. But if you've got any reading or any place you want to point us, because it sounds fascinating, it's something I'd definitely like to learn more about.
The point is you have to have something which is more extended than the current paradigm that we are all agreed on, which is our daily experience of space and time that we have, the 3 dimensions. And then time, which is already, 5 minutes on a dentist chair is something different than 5,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Giving birth. That's a really good, if you want to twist time, that's a really good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah. So anyhow, my second book to end this story is all about my understanding, everything I gathered of just giving an option or like a model how we can see reality from a more extended point of view. I mean, that's not a new thing that I invented. As I said, it's an old philosophy that goes through Hermetics, Vedic, and all, like with Plato and so on. And we find it today with certain scientific anomalies, like the entanglement of quantum particles. We can't explain either how one entangled particle can be on one side of the universe and the other one can be on the other side. And if you change one, the other one reacts immediately. While we know that nothing travels to space faster than the speed of light. So how is it possible if light years away, something interacts with each other, this non-locality? So all these paradoxes or anomalies that we find in physics, that all, plays together if you also look into these ancient philosophies. And homeopathy plays right into that, because that gives us the foundation where we start understanding that reality or our physical construct is governed by information. And when we go give something like a sugar pill with information, it's like a CD with some encoded stuff in that, which is probably entangled to a higher information realm, then that can have a tremendous impact. And that is what people see. Not everybody needs to explain that. They say, okay, I have my experience and I know this little sugar pill can make a difference in the right occasion. But if you are like a very mind-governed person like me, you always need to have something to hold on and to explain it. And for those suffering the same condition as me, always need to find nuts and bolts where you have a model where you can hold on to it. My second book is the right one. And then the third book that I want to write after that is definitely going into the homeopathic and the understanding of what I understood as what is health, what is this evolutionary process, which is connected with health, because our body always expresses certain disharmonies or conflicts that we are unaware of because we pushed it in the subconscious or we just hold it back. Until this book is translated, it might be some time.
Okay.
Until then, we still have some translated books from Antonie.
And where's the best place to access them? Just on Amazon, or has she got a?
So that's complicated. When you're living in the US, I made some PDFs available. Those were I gave them for a very good price because these are still the old editions. Some little parts are missing here and there, which you have in the used edition, and you can order them with books on demand. But I will talk to the people that at the moment taking care of the heritage or, everything that Antonie left. And the best idea that I come up with is that we put it on KDP. That is Amazon print on demand. So that would make the books, the few translations that we have, available in a physical form for everyone.
Okay, well, you've got about 2 months before this podcast episode comes out, so you've got some work ahead of you.
Don't put pressure on me. But
well, tell us a bit about creative homeopathy. So I had a look on the website. It sounds really fascinating, and it sounds like you're translating those symptoms into what the metaphysical meaning behind it is. That was my understanding of it. And there's books like The Secret Language of the Body. There's a few those types of books. And tell us a bit about creative homeopathy, and if I'm understanding that kind of roughly. But it sounds like it's based on 3 pillars. and tell us what it is and where we can study it, and maybe how Antonie came up with it. Like, what made her decide to develop this?
So the last question is a very interesting one. How did she come to all these conclusions? Yeah. So first of all, to make the rough distinction between classical homeopathy and creative homeopathy. So the first thing is that you look at a person as a holistic being, and that means that, as I mentioned before, that symptoms are like a secret language that your body expresses on a somatic level, is some kind of conflict or some kind of paradox that you are having inside, but you are not really able to grasp because you pushed it in the unconscious, or you already convinced yourself that this is normal. But the body expresses that and wants to be seen. This conflict wants to be seen, confronted, wants to be dissolved. And the first time Tony started, to see the little patterns that I have, and also little symptoms that come up. The things that go away after time. You don't even dare bother to give a remedy sometimes, but they all talk the language, especially when it came to certain symptoms I had as a kid, for example. So childhood trauma. And all these things, the more you learn about it and you can decipher decode this kind of language, then it's talking a lot. And she's not the first person to figure that out. And I know there are good books also in English and I don't know even if that is called symptom language. That is a word that Antonie came up with. There might be other expressions for that. But for example, when you have chronic shoulder pain, you're carrying some kind of emotional burden. That is the language. Or if you have, for example, pain in your knee, then it's mostly that you feel like you're bending towards an authority. When people or clients come to me and say, yeah, I have this knee pain since my childhood on the right side, then I know immediately that the father, right side is the male aspect to it, so that the father must have been a very dominant person. And pain in general doesn't mean this is a bad person. It just means pain, you're acting against yourself by, subduing yourself to this authority. You're not standing up for your own interests. So the person is just there to test you and to show you, where you have to evolve, where you have to stand up for your own individuality, and learning with this conflict of having an authority that dictates a certain way that you have to behave or where you want to go. It's not what you really intrinsically want to go. So there's a conflict. And with this conflict, there's a lot of other things that come along. And if you understand that, then you're already triggering an internal process which can already be really healing. And the information from the homeopathic remedies just play into that, because she also decoded a lot of remedies. So I was partially part of that, but usually she took her best students and they all took a certain remedy. Either they really just take it orally, or sometimes most who are very sensitive, they just need to take a tube of these remedies in their hands. That's all it takes to get in resonance with the remedy, and then see what kind of feelings and what kind of emotions and stories come up. And then when it's all summed up, then there is some kind of message that comes along, and some kind of archetypical kind of conflict that is involved. And so she took every remedy and she made a list of each remedy, what kind of message is behind it, what kind of conflict, archetypical, so something which can come in various forms, but describes a certain core of conflict.
There's another book, which I'm just trying to look here to see if I've got it here. The idea was kind of like the lesson that remedy has to learn in this lifetime. For example, Lycopodium needs to learn that they don't have to dominate somebody else to feel good about themselves. Like, is that kind of what you're saying? Like,
there's a couple of examples on my website, just excerpts from the books, just to give you some basics. For example, Natrium muriaticum is something, that the message behind that is that you don't have to hold on to the old ways you were always, it's a very basic remedy that you're holding on to a certain idea of how something has to be, especially when you're used to specific life conditions, like relationships or job that you're doing, and now everything has crumbled. You could see that as a catastrophe or as an opportunity, and that's that the message of the remedy is seeing that don't hold on to something, but rather see everything that happens. And even if it looks from the first understanding, it's a catastrophe, it also implies that there is opportunity for some new positive change in your life. So opium is a remedy which gives you the opportunity to go into the subconsciouses much more. And because it is as a classical, let's say, as a drug, like it used to be in the old times where people sitting in an opium den. So they were confronting themselves with their subconscious by drifting away. And, homeopathic remedy that is not happening in a form of physical experience, but your subconscious and your conscious get more equalized, or let's say there is an interaction or synchronization between those. And it is a very good remedy, for example, to get started to become aware of certain unconscious movements that are happening in your psychology. So on my website, this is the website which was my first attempt to transport creative homeopathy to an English audience. I wrote some articles myself, which is, for example, the 6-part organon of creative homeopathy, because the organon, originally written by Hahnemann, it is hard to read, even for a German in the original, but he somehow tortured his patients they had to read it back in the days. And I felt like, if my clients want to get treated, then they have to read also to get a little bit understanding of the philosophical background, what makes our creative homeopathy different from the usual approach.
So is this all covered in a book? Like, does it cover the symptom language and then some of the remedies, or is this the stuff that you cover in the course? And you said the courses. So sorry, this is me being intrigued, because I'm like, how do I learn this? It sounds really interesting.
So it gives you the basic idea.
Okay.
So I don't write it as Antonie would have written it. I write it more from a more layman perspective, actually. And my understanding, and I implement some of my own, let's say, epiphanies I had on my path of understanding what health is, what information medicine in general, and what the path to being whole, being healed, so to say. And to the best of my ability, I wrote that in a 6-part article. It could be one long article, but I put it in a logical chapter, so to say. If you're looking for some typical examples of remedies and what their message is, and also I have on my website put some examples of what kind of symptoms describe for what kind of conflict or inner situation that wants to become aware, want to be faced, want to be confronted. So this idea of how the psychology or psychological kind of imprint of a remedy corresponds to psychological imprints that the person has. And, how the same principle in homeopathy that you fight the same with the same, or actually it's not fighting. It's just confronting it and overcoming it. It's not really fighting in this way, but that is there. So the whole psychological idea where psychology or deep psychology comes into creative homeopathy, I think there's many examples from side of the remedies, also from symptoms. And so you can get the general gist by looking at the website and scrolling through it.
Have you taken over her school, or like if people wanted to go and learn this in more depth, like where do they go to learn more?
Yeah, in English, it's complicated. And because I, as an ambassador, highly neglecting my job here, I should have already come up with at least, that you get the basics like we talk about here in this podcast. I hope in the future I will have the time for that. For now, I just transport the ideas and give the some good examples, and maybe other people just continue with that line of thought. Also, the third pillar of creative homeopathy is that Tony worked with, Antonie, I always called her Tony, so that she worked with high potency remedies, and in the end she created all her complex remedies with a radionic approach, and she had tremendous success with that. And I don't know, since I have always been in the realms of creative homeopathy, I'm aware that there's still a lot of discussion going on between, the classical approach where you only give one remedy at a time and then you wait what's happening. And there's a lot of discussion and polarization around this topic. And Antonie was always high priest of giving, because she saw immediately that many psychological patterns interact with others. So it's like a network of different traumata that create different imprints. And so if you want to grab it all and efficiently, you give more than one remedy. And actually she was like sometimes giving 30, 40 remedies at a time, which is insanity for other people. But she explained me her reasoning, not only as I try to convey here, but she also said, look, this is an information which is probably not so easily available in the English-speaking countries, because here in Germany, we still have a lot of material from Hahnemann. And in his old days, he kept his patient files. And if you look into that, then you see that at the end of his career, he started to work also with several remedies at a time. Back in the days, I think when he died, he was working with 99 different remedies, not even 100, nowadays we have thousands.
I once read he proved 120 remedies, but I don't know if my source was necessarily that reliable. But yeah, so basically somewhere between 90 and 100 whatever remedy, not like 8,000 or whatever remedies we have now.
Exactly. So that's my point. But he already started with using more than one remedy at a time. And also what is still available here in Germany is his correspondences with his students or people that, that already became like established homeopaths at the time. And instead of embracing this change, actually there was a lot of upheaval. Backlash, so to say, because all his students said, look, you made laws and you taught us laws for decades. And now you're washing it all away and say, because one of these laws is one remedy at a time, and now you throw that overboard. You cannot do that. And so to keep peace, he didn't change the organ. But he realized that his reasoning for saying just one remedy at a time is because he saw, as a physician, he saw that you fight one symptom and you create another symptom at the other, the symptom was just moving around. So it's like the symptom, if we see the symptom as a language of the body to express a certain discrepancy or some kind of conflict, it's like telling you you're not allowed to complain anymore. And I forbid that you say these and that words, so now you're forced to express your situation with other words. So Hahnemann saw that, and sometimes, and we know that from modern medicine, the same occurs, that the physicians lose track of all the remedies or substances that they gave to their patients and what symptoms come from what, and he wanted to make it different with homeopathy. But later he understood that this is not the same principle because it's information. And if I give you an information that you're already aware of, telling you the sky is blue, you will say, yes, I know. So there is no deeper resonance. But if I give you an information that really alters your perspective on things, then there's a deep resonance. You might still fighting it or saying, oh, that can't be, but even aggression or trying to fight it might, is already a resonance that is happening. So there is a conflict. There is something that is pulled out. And this idea of resonance also is an idea which we find also in the Hermetics, the resonance principle. I think Hahnemann at the end of his life, he figured that homeopathy is not what we see when we give remedies in a classical physical sense, but information applies to different set of rules here.
I have often thought that if he lived for another 200 years, where we would be right now, because today is the 5th of April and Hahnemann's birthday is in 5 days on the 10th of April. My birthday was yesterday. So I'm always also in Aries. And sometimes I feel like I really resonate with him because that entrepreneurial Aries spirit of like, or that trailblazing, going out there, like changing things, trying new things. You know, he was really ahead of his time and he was experimenting all along the way. He never said, okay, this is it. And then just sat and that's that. Right up until his death, he was still changing and evolving. And so sometimes I do wonder when there's so much pushback against homeopathy evolving. I think Hahnemann would have done exactly the same as what we're doing now with all the different things that we're doing. And he probably would have been fine. But I feel like a kindred spirit to him in that way. And I was just look at myself where when I started homeopathy, I was like a single remedy, this and that, very classical. And now I'm like, I don't know, there's no bounds, but it also comes from interviewing 200 different homeopaths and learning different ways of doing things. And the other thing is, like you say, having access to those German letters and German texts that have not all been translated. And sometimes there's lots of Chinese whispers in homeopathy and we get told that this and that and happened when actually it didn't, or there's no way for us to verify it unless you can speak German and go and read the original text. So it's interesting to hear you say that with the letters, between students and things, that there was different information that came out there. And who were we to say where Hahnemann would have ended up today? Maybe he would have prescribed like 30 remedies and, 10 mm or 50 cm at a time.
See, that's an information that resonates. Some homeopaths, they take this remedy. Look, Hahnemann said, or he did, and people say, yeah, I know, I do it myself. I'm convinced there's no deeper resonance here. That is confirmation that my own approach is the right one or is probable. But for some homeopaths, they are still very dogmatic in their approach because they say, I want to stick to the original manuscript, to the organon. I can hardly recommend that you look deeper into sources that you probably are not available to you. But let me tell you, if you are German, if you have access to the old letters and stuff, some of them have been published. So then you see he did it already in the next phase. Before I forget, herzlichen Glückwunsch nachträglich. That's how we Germans say happy birthday, belated.
Happy birthday. Dankeschön.
And so Tony definitely was an advocate for being more playful with that. It's information. And either you accept these information, if I give you some kind of painkiller, there is no free will in accepting it or not accepting it. It will have a biophysical impact on your body. But with information, there's always, your subconscious can always decide to reject those information and not be ready to accept it. But most, in every evolutionary process that we go through as a soul, as a human being, we always have to consider different perspectives. And the more perspectives we get, the more we might find this path for us where we want to position ourselves in a harmonic way.
And the reality is the world that we live in, Hahnemann could never, ever have fathomed the world that we live in these days. So sometimes I do feel, at the core, I do think homeopathy is very simple and uncomplicated and very easy at the core. But we live in a completely different world with completely different challenges to what he experienced back then. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I'm always not flip-flopping. Maybe flip-flopping in my ideas around homeopathy. I do believe essentially at the core is actually quite simple, but I do think we do need different ways of approaching a case, different ways of prescribing, new remedies, it's just boring being stagnant and just playing with the same toys all the time. We want different toys, but then also try not to get lost in all the different toys, which is what I'm constantly struggling with interviewing so many different homeopaths. There's all these shiny things. Oh, I want to play with that. I want to play with that, which is also great because I always find you're going to attract the clients that needs what you have to offer. So that's important too. Christian, I just want to ask you about homeology as well. What is that? I saw that written on the...
Yeah. That is pretty much artificial name that was given to the remedies because in Germany, every information medicine homeopathic remedies that are made the classical way fall under the law of homeopathy. If you create them with a radiological approach, meaning you're not taking the original stuff and diluting it to a point where you have potency that you like, then it's called homologicals. That's the name that Antonie gave to those remedies that she produced with her own radionics machine. So, that doesn't fall under the law and regulations. It doesn't require that it needs to be, that you have to get it from a pharmacy, for example. So you just give it a different name. From my point of view, it's like selling DVDs or Blu-rays or whatever that have been pressed and selling DVDs that had been made with a laser, a different technology. But in the end, it's information on a kind of, I don't have the right term in German, I would say Informationsträger. So it's something that carries information. And the same is what the DVD or this plastic disc is. It's just globally. And how you get the information on there, or how you create the entanglement with the information field. That doesn't, from Tony's and my point of view, it doesn't make any difference. But for the law, it does.
So does she have her own range of remedies that people can purchase? And
yeah.
Oh, okay. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's probably if you want to have whole set, then the people that take care of a company, they will send it to the US. But when you want to have single remedy, probably the shipping costs might be overwhelming. I don't know. So, but and the website probably is only on German, but you can get probably a PDF with the list of it's all complex remedies. So she already certain remedies together where she felt that those remedies tell basically the same story range. And that, for example, if you certain topic going on and she described the topics, meaning the psychological imprints or the conflicts that you have and which come with certain symptoms, then she already put up 10, 20 remedies. I mean, complex remedies. This is not a new thing, but that's something that she has, like, I have 600 complex remedies in my bag that you can cover a wide range.
600 combinations.
Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah, so there's 600 different combinations. So she put a lot of work in that. And she made it really easy for the Germans. Again, if you are able to speak German, she also developed a software, not herself, but she obviously gave the idea to someone who made it possible. So it's easy that you put in all the symptoms and it gives you a combination of the different repertories, the classical ones, but also the not so known books where symptoms are linked to a certain remedy. And you can, by computer, you can see what are if you give a lot of symptoms and a lot of conditions, then the more you get remedies and you can see what all these remedies, what is the topic behind it, so meaning the psychological topic. And then you can also press a little button and say, okay, the first most prevalent remedies, how do they combine into one complex remedy from the 600 that are available? So that makes it, the software makes it very easy for me. Others, need to learn it, need to be really fast with their books, their repertories, or they use different kind of software, but this software makes it really easy to not only have the symptoms, but also the symptom language. And then you see the cross pattern between the psychological aspect or message that the remedies have. Yeah.
Well, part of me is really annoyed that it's not in English, and part of me is really glad that it's not, because I just don't need any more software or anything else to add. So I don't know whether to be happy or sad. But for our listeners, I was actually just going to check here on my statistics on my podcast how many German listeners we have. It's not very many. Oh, Germany, it's 0.52% of our listeners.
Yeah.
So not many. Sorry, guys. But there might be people who are bilingual who are in America and they do speak German and they can purchase this software if they want. So is that something that they can purchase through you, or how do they get hold of that?
Once again, I'm not here I can't sell that much. The purpose I'm really here is just to give some little information, like a little
So just to
imprints
tease us and then tell us we can't have it. Oh, okay. Fair enough.
I will work on it to make it available. I hope I can find some time for that in the future. I also have to talk with those people that take care of a company, and it takes time, and it takes also effort and money and so on. But the basic ideas that I want to convey is like, first of all, see the connection between your mind and body, or your psychological, or your subconscious and your soma. I mean, this idea is not new, but it is, really deep if you go into that. And there's also, you don't need to buy the books of Antonie. You find similar good books also in English. And that opens up a whole new dimension. And the next thing, creative homeopathy, what it really stands for is, don't be afraid. It's information. You can play around with that. Be more, it's this old notion of just one remedy and be careful, you can do something wrong. I don't feel, even if there are some side effects or some effects coming up from a remedy, it means just there's another layer, a hidden layer of conflict that also wants to be seen. Because under one layer, from my own path, and also seeing that from my clients, is you have, someone comes and has an issue and want to work on that. But we are all souls that come with a big backpack of past life experience, or if you believe in that, or ancestral experience, if you believe in that, epigenetics, so that you carry also imprints and trauma from your lineage. No matter how you want to look at it, or you look at it holistically, that you as a soul always choose the family which has the same traumata and issues in their lineage as you as a soul have. No matter how you look at it. But from my experience, we carry a lot with us, and it is always the stuff which is looking out of the top. But under that, there are different layers, and this evolutionary process to devaluate or neutralize all these negative experiences into, from a holistic perspective, that actually oneness just experience itself through itself. And everything is just an experience, everything is temporary, just an experience. And come back to this understanding that is de-evaluating or neutralizing. That's what I call it. And there's a lot of stuff that we need to de-evaluate or neutralize. And, when you take the first layer, then most certainly other layers will come up, and that they will also try to express themselves sometimes through symptoms. So have an evolutionary process in overcoming those imprints that are based on past traumata. That is, I think, one of the main reasons why we're here and why we come back so many times. I was about to say,
if you try to remove all the layers, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because I don't think we wouldn't come down here otherwise if there wasn't shit to solve, right? We come here with
exactly.
Depending on what your beliefs are. But just, how hard or easy we make it for ourselves, that's, that's the question. I really love that you shared with us about Antonie Peppler, because it's important to honor these people that have done this work as well. We had a lady on the podcast that shared about the life of Alvia Berry, who was this incredible homeopath in South Africa and who also passed away about 2 years ago. And it was so lovely that she came and shared about this woman and her work, because often these people are doing incredible work, but they don't get the acknowledgement that they deserve, or not that many people know about their work. So it doesn't matter if they've passed or not. I think it's important to talk about them and the work that they've done and the people that they've helped, the ideas that they've put out there, because it inspires all of us and helps us to think outside the box and keep challenging the status quo and keep asking questions. And so I love that you've shared about her. Thank you so much for that. And tell us a bit, are you seeing clients? What's the main thing you're keeping yourself busy with these days?
Yeah, I kept myself under the radar because I was so occupied with writing the book. Once in a while, I have a patient here in Switzerland, but since my French is mediocre, and if you really want to go deep into psychological, you need someone who's either speaking German or English, that I really can help. But once in a while, so maybe in a month, I have 2-3 patients, clients, but at the moment that is totally okay. There will be a time where really focus more on my work. But as you know, if you write a book, it's not done with that. You have to give interviews, a lot of interviews as well. And it takes a lot of effort to work on that. But you gave me a great opportunity to share at least some of the basic ideas that Tony brought to life or really pushed forward. And yes, she did a tremendous work. She really dedicated. And to the end, I mean, I told her, look, you're not 30 anymore. You could, slow down a little bit. But no, she was driving. Yeah, she was driving hard. But in the end, I felt like she wrote her third book just on the remedies. That was the famous third book on decoding remedies. She wrote many other books, but it was a much anticipated third book. And when that was finished, I always felt like her mission is over. So yeah, this feeling was already there. She did her work, and she sometimes, if you look at Tony's life and you make comparisons to Hahnemann's life, also the personality, a little bit bellicose, always in a way of like to fight with other opinions and moving many times and stuff like that. And also if you see this very unusual curly hair that you don't find often in life, really, and as both persons have. I sometimes believe that she is like the reincarnation of Hahnemann. And when she comes back, she probably will fight with those who create a homeopathy too dogmatic. I don't know. But the idea is, that at least the same kind of soul family, if you believe in that the soul or oversoul is more like a piece of dough, and every time there's a little piece of that goes into this realm experience stuff. And maybe there might be some kind of group missions to push a certain idea, and the idea of homeopathy, that information can help you. Evolutionary process as a soul, spiritual evolution, if you will. That definitely is something like a red line that pushes through the centuries, because Hahnemann was also not the first one who pushed the idea. And there will be others, that will take that and move on and bring it to a next level. And maybe, this little butterfly effect can happen here, because someone takes that and carries on the candle or pushes it to the next level.
And that's what I love about podcasting, because it's evergreen, right? So people are always discovering the podcast for the first time, even though it's been around for 2.5 years. There's always like, oh, I've just discovered your podcast, and, binge listening to your episodes. And then they listen to it for the first time, and then like, oh, and we've had some really interesting things happen just from putting the content out there. I'm such a big believer in just put it out there, and the people that it resonate with, it will attract them, and you never know where it will end up. But Christian, is there just a final message that you want to leave our listeners with, and where can they get hold of you and your work?
Yeah, final message. I think I really put it to the point that be more creative with your homeopathy. You don't need to follow creative homeopathy, but be more creative with your way of homeopathy. Don't be afraid. Go more with your intuition on that. Feel your client, feel yourself. So I think that's already a good message that should be on the bottom line here. If you want to get hold of me, so my website, that's the official creative homeopathy website I actually did for Tony back, and I also neglected a little bit, but it's still basic information out there. You can contact me if you want to know more, if you want to have like a personal conversation about your own issues. There might be some wait time, but things are possible. Otherwise, I hope this whole podcast was also like a complex remedy. There are many different topics, and with some you might have resonated, with others less. Okay, that's fine. So take away what you feel like inspired you. And I hope that people feel that way, being inspired.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was lovely to chat with you, and I look forward to chatting with you again sometime. Never know where I might end up.
Yeah. Please.
Thank you so much.
Feel free. Thank you very much.
Bye.